I didn't plan on coming here. It was one of those gray afternoons when the city felt too loud, too fast, and too heavy. I needed a pause, a place where the walls didn't echo with demands and deadlines. So, on a whim, I wandered into a small cafe tucked between two buildings on a narrow street I had never noticed before. Its windows were fogged, warm light spilling onto the wet pavement, like a secret it was quietly keeping from the world. The bell above the door jingled as I entered, announcing my presence. The scent of freshly baked bread and dark roasted coffee hit me instantly, grounding me in a strange, comforting way. There were only a handful of people scattered around, some hunched over laptops, others whispering in low tones, but the atmosphere felt intimate, like the cafe had a heartbeat of its own, soft and inviting. I chose a corner seat by the window, where the light painted golden patterns across the table. Ordering felt almost ceremonial, a latte with a hint of vanilla and a chocolate croissant, still warm from the oven. As I waited, I let myself watch the world outside, people hurrying along, umbrellas bobbing in rhythm with the drizzle, but my attention kept drifting back inside. There was a quiet hum here, a slow rhythm I hadn't realized I'd been craving. Then I noticed her. She moved behind the counter with ease, an effortless grace that made it seem like the world had slowed down just for her. She smiled at the customers, taking their orders with warmth that didn't feel practiced, but genuine. And when she looked in my direction, it was like she could see right through the walls I had built around myself. My chest tightened slightly, and I found myself holding my breath, as though afraid that even the act of exhaling would break the spell. The first sip of coffee hit my lips, rich and smooth, and for a moment, I felt like I could forget the world outside. And then, she walked over to my table. She approached with a gentle smile, holding a small cup of something I hadn't ordered. "On the house," she said softly, and I realized I had been staring. I managed a nervous laugh, feeling my cheeks warm. There was something about the way she looked at me, curious, unjudging, that made it easy to forget everything else, like the city, my worries, even time itself, had ceased to exist. "I'm sorry, did you make this for me?" I asked, my voice quieter than intended. She nodded, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I thought you might like it. You looked like someone who needed it." Her words were simple, almost casual, yet they carried a weight I couldn't put into words. She didn't rush away. She stood there for a heartbeat, letting me absorb her presence. We started talking, first about small things, the weather, the cafe, how long she had been working there. But soon, our conversation deepened in ways that felt impossible in a stranger's encounter. I told her about the city that sometimes felt too heavy, the routine that felt like a cage. She listened, truly listened, with eyes that didn't wander and a soft smile that seemed to encourage honesty. She laughed at something I said, a laugh so genuine it pulled me closer without a single touch. And I found myself sharing things I hadn't even admitted to myself, fears and dreams and the little cracks in my armor I usually hid. The cafe faded around us. The sound of the rain outside, the chatter of other customers, even the aroma of coffee, all became a soft blur. All that mattered was her. At one point, our hands brushed accidentally while she was handing me a napkin, and the electricity of that fleeting touch made my heart skip. I wasn't prepared for this. For how quickly she had begun to occupy space inside my mind, or how my thoughts were already drifting toward a world where she was in it. She smiled again, knowingly this time, and I realized I hadn't wanted to leave the moment, nor the small cafe that had suddenly become a universe of its own. Time seemed to lose its shape. The drizzle outside turned into a steady rain, tapping against the window like a gentle drum, but I barely noticed. We kept talking about books we loved, movies that made us cry, and songs that felt like secret messages meant only for us. With every word, every laugh, every glance, the space between us shrank until it felt like the universe had condensed into the small corner of the cafe where we sat. She leaned forward slightly, resting her chin on her hand, eyes glimmering with something I couldn't quite name. I realized I was staring, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't help it. Her presence had a gravity, pulling me in, making me forget the world outside, the deadlines, the noise, the chaos. Here, in her light, everything else seemed irrelevant. At one point, she asked me what I loved most about quiet moments like this. I hesitated, unsure how to answer without sounding like a fool. But then I spoke, letting the words slip out before I could second guess. I think it's that you can really notice someone. Really see them. Like, really exist with them for a little while, and nothing else matters. She smiled, the kind of smile that makes your chest ache and your heart race at the same time. I feel the same way, she said softly. And in that instant, something shifted. The subtle connection we'd been building became undeniable, palpable. When she laughed again low, soft, and effortless, I felt like I could breathe for the first time in months. The cafe had transformed from a mere refuge into a sanctuary. I didn't know her name yet or where this encounter might lead, but I knew one thing. I couldn't go back to the world outside, not just yet. She leaned over the counter to grab a pen, scribbling something on a napkin. Handing it to me, she whispered, "I hope you come back tomorrow. I want to hear the rest of your story." And in that moment, I realized I had already started forgetting the world I had left behind the moment I walked in. The napkin in my hand felt heavier than paper had any right to be. Her name was written on it in careful, looping letters, Lila. Beneath it, a little note, "Come back tomorrow. I'll be here." I didn't even need to think twice. Something inside me had already decided. I folded the napkin carefully and slipped it into my pocket, feeling a flutter of anticipation I hadn't felt in years. The rest of my latte went cold, unnoticed, as we continued talking, and I felt a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with coffee. She leaned closer to hear me over the soft jazz playing from hidden speakers, and I caught a whiff of her perfume, soft, floral, yet not overpowering, and it made my pulse quicken in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. At some point, she mentioned her favorite table, one tucked at the back with a view of a small courtyard where ivy climbed lazily over a brick wall. Her eyes sparkled as she described it, and I realized she had an intimacy with this place I didn't, yet somehow I already felt at home because she was here. There was an effortless elegance to the way she moved, the way she spoke, the way she smiled, and I found myself memorizing her gestures like I'd known her forever. I noticed the little details too, the way her hands moved when she spoke, the soft tilt of her head when she laughed, the quick glance at the clock that betrayed her modest concern about leaving. I couldn't stop myself from imagining what it would be like to spend hours just like this, in conversation that stretched across afternoons, in a small cafe that seemed to exist solely for the two of us. When it was finally time to leave, the moment felt suspended. I lingered at the door, reluctant to step back into the rain-soaked streets. She walked me to the door, and we shared a smile that said more than words ever could. In that fleeting, stolen instant, the world outside ceased to matter. As I stepped into the drizzle, my heart refused to let go. Something had shifted irrevocably inside me. I realized that this wasn't just a cafe, and she wasn't just a barista. Something had begun delicate, fragile, but impossibly alive, and I knew I would follow it wherever it might lead. The next day, I returned. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under a shy winter sun. My heartbeat was in sync with every step toward the cafe, every jingle of the doorbell that announced my arrival. And there she was, Lila, behind the counter, radiant as if the room itself had been waiting for her to appear. She greeted me with that same gentle smile, one that made the world shrink until it existed only around her. I felt my hands tingle as I placed myself in my usual corner, but this time, she came over almost immediately. "I wondered if you'd come," she said, her voice soft, intimate, as if she had been speaking directly to the part of me that had been holding its breath since yesterday. We talked again, but this time the air between us held something more than curiosity and kindness. There was an unspoken acknowledgement of the connection we had begun to forge, a magnetic pull neither of us could deny. Her laughter, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke, the subtle brush of her fingers against mine while passing a cup of coffee, all of it made me forget myself entirely. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. I had no sense of time. The world outside, the noise, the chaos, the responsibilities, simply didn't exist anymore. I realized I hadn't just come to the cafe to escape. I had come to find her. And she had been waiting knowingly, patiently, to draw me into this small universe she inhabited. When I finally stood to leave, I hesitated. Lila reached out, lightly touching my hand. Her eyes met mine, and in that single look, she said everything that words couldn't: stay, or at least come back soon. I smiled, heart-pounding, because I knew I would. I didn't want to go back to the world I had left outside. Not yet. Walking away, I glanced back to see her smile fading behind the counter, the cafe quiet once more. But I wasn't alone. I carried the warmth of her presence with me, the spark of something new, something extraordinary. And in that instant, I understood what it meant to forget the world, not because it no longer existed, but because I had found someone who made me feel like the only thing that ever truly mattered.